Okay, rapidly running out of moments in step 2. We got 3 left, so let's see what number we get today from 1 to 3. Okay, it gave me 2, which, not that one. Okay, 3. Fine, I'll take it. It really wants me to do the road trip before Escapade. Anyway, let's do Escapade, and then we'll go on the road trip. You looked up, noticing the sun was finally setting. You had been trying to delay the end of the day for as long as possible. The evening breeze tickled your nose as you sat on your front porch, munching on fresh watermelon slices. Ooh. Snack made you happy. You thought watermelon was just okay. What? Only because it's a summer tradition? You weren't sure why you were eating it. Watermelon's delicious. You picked up another slice. Even though you already had dinner, you were still delighted to make room for watermelon. Watermelon is it's just so good. So refreshing. You turned to look at Cove. You both had been sitting in comfortable silence for a while now. He sat next to you, close enough for your shoulders to touch. How scandalous. He was happily absorbed in his thoughts and his own slice of watermelon. Chuckling, you watched as his face twisted in discomfort. He had to stop chewing to spit a seed into the bush. I bet I can spit a seed farther than you. Why would you shake your head in disapproval? Does anybody actually enjoy eating the seeds? I mean, I don't know what to do in this. I wouldn't be like you or this. I never spat the seeds out, though. I just kind of, moved the seed to the front of my mouth and picked it out and then, tossed it. So I guess this is the closest I've got to that. The two of you had made a little habit of periodically doing that while you had been snacking. This time he decided to make it a topic of conversation.
I hate how it feels to swallow them. Those hard black seeds.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I'm not gonna do that. Who? I need to know now, do people actually eat the seeds? I didn't even know you could. I mean, I guess they're small, but... Now I need to know. Anybody, have you ever swallowed a watermelon seed? You both went back to eating in comfortable silence, still occasionally spitting unwanted seeds into the bushes. Dots.
I wonder if I'll have another slice after this one.
That one is your third already.
Is that bad? It tastes really good.
You bumped him with your shoulder. Unable to resist, you knocked the mostly finished slice out of his hand. Rude. Smiled at him. No, it's alright. It's definitely bad. You sighed affectionately. I would have bumped him. Cove matched your smirk. He gave you a nudge in return. A little while later, Cove flinched, making a confused sound. He slowly put his current slice down on the plate next to him. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Are you? He stood up, head tilted back to look at the sky. His feet took him to the middle of the street.
Did you notice anything?
What do you mean?
I thought... I felt a raindrop.
The sun's still out. You put down your watermelon slice and hopped off of your front step. Immediately you felt a tap of water on the crown of your head, making you yelp. Ah! You're right! Oh my goodness, it's a monkey's wedding! And if you're wondering what a monkey's wedding is, this is something my husband and I say all the time. So my husband's background is South African, and his mom has told me the story many times where in South Africa, at least when she was there, it was common to use the expression a monkey's wedding for when it's raining when the sun is still shining. And she's not really quite sure why it's called a monkey's wedding, but she did say often you would see monkeys gathering when it was raining and the sun was out. So maybe that's why people started calling it a monkey's wedding. But anyway, there you go. There's your fun little bit of trivia for today. Cove was still staring up at the sky, and you watched as he began blinking more rapidly. When he finally turned in your direction, his face was bemused. A sun shower! I like that! I never heard that word before.
It's a sun shower.
It seemed crazy, but soon you couldn't avoid the drops that began increasing into a light shower. Booming with laughter, Cove kicked off his shoes towards his front door and reveled in the moment. I mean, I love rain, no matter when it's happening, so I would have been excited. You closed your eyes and threw your head back, letting the rain shower over you. The cool drops felt so right after the warmth of the day. Feeling energized, you ran over to Cove and laughed at how soaked he already was. Not that he cared, because he was busy spinning in the middle of the street, of course. You clapped and bounced up on your heels. Just as suddenly as the sprinkling started, it stopped and left you dripping with the smell of wet asphalt and soil tickling your nose. Cove caught your eyes, running a hand through his wet hair, combing it back. He frowned.
Aww.
I know, it was short-lived.
It's over.
The drops of rain clinging to his face almost could have been mistaken for tears. He sounded that disappointed. You were charmed by Of course I was charmed by Cove. I wish it lasted longer. Even just a few more minutes.
And then a few more on top of that.
He looked at you with such enthusiasm that you couldn't help but chuckle. You then looked over at your door and sighed. You knew Ma wasn't going to be happy to see you trailing water into the house. Cove rubbed his arm awkwardly. He must have been thinking the same thing because he watched you sympathetically.
It's okay.
You can dry off at my house if you want. My parents won't mind.
You're the sweetest guy I know. That would have been like, if... It's either one of these three. I mean, one of these two. One or three. I'm gonna flip a coin. Where's my coin got off to? Okay. Heads for the top one, tails for the bottom. Oh, hiya! Heads. Alright. I'm just gonna say thank ya. Thanks. Let's do that.
Yeah? Okay.
His whole demeanor brightened. You figured he must have felt relieved to help you avoid getting in any trouble. Aww. Cove led you inside and you stayed close to him.
We have a ton of spare towels. I've just gotta dig them out of the hall closet.
I mean, that would be kinda nice, but... Thank you for doing this.
You're welcome.
No problem. It'll only be a second. Just hang out in the living room. But maybe don't sit on the couch.
You answered him with a slight smile. Okay. With that, Cove disappeared and returned in no time, towels in hand.
Here.
Thanks. You accepted one and began to pat yourself down. A sudden call caught both of your attentions. Hello. I thought I heard voices. Cove's mom strolled into the living room with a curious grin.
Huh?
What happened here? You're both wet.
There was a sun shower.
Badass. Cove smiled back at his parents.
We came inside to dry off.
My moms don't want me going into my house when I'm wet.
Right.
So I told Molly to come back here.
That was very sweet of you, baby. She ruffled Cove's wet hair and laughed at the drops of water that shook off. Then a light came to Kyra's eyes.
What do you think?
I have an idea. Why don't we go for a drive? It has to beat standing around the house, and you'll air dry in no time. That's an idea. Cove only offered a shrug and a bent smile to his mom. He looked at you for a real answer. Why would your parents be like, don't just go for a random drive? I mean, I might have, like, texted or called and been like, yeah, so I'm with Cove's mom for a drive. We got wet. I'll be back soon, kind of thing. I'm okay with it, though. They can call me. Yeah, let's do it. Although this sounds like it was before cell phones. So maybe not quite so easy. Fun! This'll be good. Oh, she does have a cell phone. Hey, there we go. Kyra pulled out her cell phone from her pocket to call your moms. They had swapped numbers early in the summer.
See you soon.
She's a responsible mom. She called Called my mom's? Thank you, Kyra.
Head on out to the garage. I'll meet you there in just a minute.
Sorry.
Sorry my mom can be so pushy. She gets some idea in her head and that's what she does.
That's okay. Thanks for letting me come.
I didn't do anything.
That wasn't true at all, but you let him get away with that.
Come on.
Cove led you to the car, and Kyra wasn't too far behind.
Okay.
Into the back, you two.
Once the three of you were situated inside, Kyra started it and drove out of the residential area. When she hit a main road, the car sped up and she rolled the back windows down all the way.
Hey.
How else are you going to air dry? Cove started laughing as he kept trying in vain to keep his hair from flying into his eyes too much. Meanwhile, you closed your eyes as the wind whipped against your wet clothes.
I said this drive was going to be good for getting air dry.
Yeah, but I didn't agree to this much air.
Cove tried pressing the window button, but nothing happened. His eyebrows furrowed in frustration.
No way.
You disabled the back?
Sorry, can't hear you.
She's evil. Smiling deviously, Kyra turned on the radio and turned it up to be heard over the wind. You dance in your seat to the music. I probably would have laughed. You yelled into the wind and burst into laughter. Looking over at Cove, you saw him relax. He seemed glad that you were having fun. Whoa. And then something struck the side of your leg. Several papers were freed from under the car seats and were blown about.
Oh, they can't go out the windows!
Cove began to haphazardly reach around the space to try and get it all back under wraps. You would just watch him struggle. No, I'm gonna help. You jumped to his aid immediately, trying to snatch up every single paper crashing around within your reach. As much as you both caught fistfuls, there was no stopping a few that got sucked out the windows. Cove gasped.
Mom! Close the windows!
Kyra offered no response other than a chuckle. She kept driving. The both of you had sour looks at that. We got most of them.
I know. Thanks.
Hey. Well, what was it? The sun set completely, and at that Kyra rolled up the windows. Cove let out a big sigh and released the random bits of paper he had in his fists.
My mom is crazy.
He ran a hand through his windblown hair and laughed with a bit of exasperation. I really don't know. After all of that, you wondered what was going to come next, biting your bottom lip. Cove watched you with interest until his focus was taken by a new comment from his mom.
I bet you're not feeling damp anymore.
No, but now I feel tripped.
You could tell by his tone that at this point his complaints were more performative than serious. You spotted Kyra looking at you both a moment in the rearview mirror, smiling. Well, of course I'm gonna side with Cove. Yeah, you didn't tell us you'd trap us like that.
My bad.
Kyra continued driving. The radio volume was adjusted for the closed windows, and everyone was sitting more comfortably. Kyra lowered the sound even more after pulling into a red light. She took the chance to turn around. You caught her coy smirk.
So?
Does anyone know what we drove past during the dry cycle?
I'm not sure I want to.
A movie theater!
Okay. Most places have one somewhere.
It isn't that late, you know. We can probably still catch a show.
What?
Really, Mom? We don't even know what to be playing.
Come on.
That's what makes it fun.
Heck yeah! Yeah, I would have been at this point. I'm like, it's one thing she told him we're going for a drive, but aren't my moms expecting me back soon?
You're gonna make her parents worried.
Aw, don't get me wrong. I'm not advocating impulsive behavior every day, but it's important to seize the moment when you can. We might never have another night like this. And don't worry, Molly. I said I'd watch over you for the night, not just 10 minutes or so. I'll put your parents in the loop about hitting the movies as soon as we get there.
That's,
I didn't bring any shoes.
You should always bring shoes when you're going out. Honestly, in summertime, I never wore shoes either. I'm not wearing any either.
How are we gonna go inside barefoot?
I don't know.
it's alright.
We'll sneak through quick. No one will notice. You can do it just this once.
Mom's a wild child. You shared a look with Cove. It was comforting that at least you were on this wild ride together, I guess. Kyra drove into the theater parking lot and shut the engine off. With the unbuckling of her seatbelt, she ushered you and Cove out. Despite being hesitant to leave, once outside, Cove burst into a sprint towards the cinema. You were right along with him. The tarmac was still wet from before and cold to stand on with bare feet. Inside, you noticed there were no lines. All the current shows had already started. Kyra paid that no mind and strode up towards the counter with some words of encouragement.
A third of the running time is ads these days. We haven't missed anything.
Meanwhile, Cove stood next to you awkwardly. He shifted from one foot to the other and constantly kept looking around. His shady behavior would have made him much more likely to get caught than standing still would have if there were people around to really notice. But the more anxiously he behaved, the more it rubbed off on you. You fidgeted in place. What would I have done in this situation? Probably either consoled or teased. One or the other. I'll flip a coin for this one. Heads, console. Whoops. Drop coin. Tails for tease. Hiya! Tails. Alright, we be teasing. The floor isn't so bad. What could be on it? Maybe spilled soda and crushed popcorn.
Ew. Don't remind me.
I don't have to. I think the sticky floor will.
What did you say?
You kept your mouth shut and shook your head in response. Cove scoffed, amused.
Well, you remember that you're standing in it too.
Eliciting a sigh of relief out of you, Kyra returned with the tickets in hand. She quickly herded you and Cove towards the showing room.
I am so sorry for the little hiccup, but hold on. We've almost made it home free. Once we sit down, it'll be smooth sailing.
Oh. The lights were already off in the showing room, but the movie hadn't started yet. The upcoming movie trailers were still playing.
Aha!
Yes!
Keeping her volume in a hushed tone, Kyra couldn't help but burst with excitement over your luck. You followed her down the walkway until she spotted open seats in the middle-ish area of the theater. Kyra pointed at the seats, looking over her shoulder at you and Cove, waiting for input. Cove nodded and you decided to give her a thumbs up and she led the way. When you reached your seats, Kyra sighed contentedly. Cove gave a sigh of his own and lifted his feet to sit cross-legged instead of keeping them down on the floor. He then leaned over and whispered to you.
Do you have any idea what the movie is?
No, I didn't hear the name or anything when your mom bought the tickets.
Oh boy.
Please don't be a romance? After a couple more previews, the main event began. It dawned on you quickly that it was a horror film. Okay, that's fine. One about a group of students being haunted by dangerous ghosts. You were psyched. You could live with that. You thought this was going to be annoying. You became nervous. You were terrified. You couldn't do this. You had to leave. I didn't watch a lot of horror movies growing up. I didn't really get into them until my late teens. Either this or this. Okay, flipping a coin again. Heads for live with it, tails for nervous. Hiya! Heads. Alright. I can live with it. It wasn't your favorite kind of movie, but you didn't hate scary movies either. You were willing to wait and see if it was dull or had some entertainment value. Glancing over at Cove, you notice that he looked less than thrilled with the movie. He bit down on his bottom lip and stared at the screen with trembling eyes. Oh, Cove. Cove had never been a fan of ghosts or intentionally frightening things. That was something you learned about him early on. Covered your ears. Interesting. Yeah, probably I would have done this. You bent yourself more and more until you were essentially leaning against him. It had been slow enough that Cove hadn't noticed at first. But soon he started to peek at you out of the corner of his eyes. I don't know if I would be so bold. Although, if he was scared... I might have, actually. I think my main concern would have just been, like, is he okay? More than, like, thinking, oh, it's so romantic, we're holding... Like, after the fact, it would have been like, oh my god, we held hands. But, like, in this moment, I probably would have been like, if you need it. He took it immediately. My heart! His fingers held firmly to yours, and he was able to face the screen again with a lighter expression. Sometimes the other people in the theater screamed, or jeered, or clapped, depending on what was happening. Your heart was pounding in your chest when the movie finally came to an end. The main character resolved the hauntings, but in a dark conclusion, they didn't make it out alive. You stayed to let the credits roll and for the theater to clear out. Then it was time to head back to the car. We lived. Both you and Cove took the same seats in the back of the car again. Even though it was late, Kyra was exuding an upbeat, cheerful energy.
What a great flick!
I guess.
It wasn't so bad in the end.
You enjoyed it, baby?
No, I mean, it's hard to explain. I got really tense, and I guess that's the point of horror stuff, but I kinda don't want to have to feel like that. Now that it's all over, though, it was sort of cool to do.
Fantastic.
That's so great. Molly, how are you feeling?
It was just bad. I don't know. Like, I would never want to be rude. So even if I was like, it sucked, I would never actually say that. So probably this one. It was terrible, but that made it fun.
Fair. Sometimes bad movies are good for just for that reason.
I still can't believe they died. It's nice when things aren't all obvious and you don't really know how it'll end until you see it. But I wanted it to go better.
I demand a happier ending. I loved how it all fell apart when it seemed like things were gonna be okay. I saw it coming. You nodded along with what Cove was saying. It was so lame. I demand a happier ending.
Yeah.
You and Cove spent the rest of the car ride absorbed in conversation about the movie.
So, who's hungry?
Why do I feel like this was all you chaperoning a date between the two of us? You're like, go for a nice ride with some music, go to the movie theater, now we're gonna go out for a meal. Kyra, what's your game? You were surprised when you realized Kyra didn't drive you home, but to a drive-through burger restaurant instead. I mean, I'm never gonna say no to burgers. Yeah.
That's the spirit. Get whatever you want.
Whoa. A hamburger, a cheeseburger, a chicken sandwich, a spicy chicken sandwich, French fries, onion rings, a salad, chicken nuggies, mozzarella sticks, a soda, a milkshake, a soft serve cone, a chocolate chip cookie. I was really big into cheeseburgers in my teens. I'm not so much anymore, but I really liked them in my teens. French fries, of course. And a milkshake. That's everything for me. Is that alright?
Of course.
It's A-okay.
Kyra pulled up to the window and ordered what you asked for first. She then decided to order one of everything on the value menu. Okay.
Whoa, what are you gonna do with all of that?
Eat it.
Where do you put it?
Really?
The whole menu?
That's right. There are only maybe 10 things on it, and they're about $1 each. I can swing it. And besides, whatever we don't finish, I'm gonna feed it to your dad. He'll be in heaven.
Cove sighed affectionately at his mother's antics. Thank you.
You're welcome.
A few minutes later, Kyra exchanged her money for multiple bags of food, which she quickly tossed to you both in the back seats. She then drove off into the night.
Can you pass me something?
What should I grab?
Surprise me.
You chose one of the wrapped sandwiches and handed it to her. You had no idea if it was a burger or something else.
Thank you.
Accepting that this was what was happening, Cove shrugged and started pulling food out of the bags for himself. Cove ended up with some onion rings and he happily munched on them. Yeah, I'd grab something I liked. Kyra's crazy ride just kept going. You had to wonder if this night would ever end. The adventure continued, and you were so preoccupied in the back that you almost didn't realize the car had stopped. Kyra turned to look over her shoulder.
Okay, party people, it seems we've reached the end of the road.
Confused, you checked out the window and saw nothing except empty road ahead. And then you noticed it. The now leaving sign. Kyra took you through the entire town. That sign brings back memories.
What are we doing here?
Kyra turned the car around and parked it along the side of the road.
I think you both could use a break to stretch your legs, and I doubt anyone is going to come through here this time of night. Besides, I need to make a call, so go on.
What is happening tonight? This is so weird. Cove shook his head and got out of the car without a fight. Wait, were you trying to get the two of us away for my moms to, like, plan something? Is that what's been happening? Well, I mean, I'm obviously gonna follow Cove. Yeah, this brings back some memories, alright. You got out and caught up to Cove. He was busy looking at the stars and stretching his arms while he strolled around. You were mad? Yeah, it was pretty cool. This was a good place to stop. If she was gonna take us all around town, at least it wasn't done halfway. Cove smiled, glancing from the stars to you. Shortly after, you noticed Cove's expression changed. His eyebrows furrowed, and it seemed like he was thinking hard about what he wanted to say next.
I'm so sorry.
Aw.
Molly, I am really sorry for my mom being crazy tonight. She isn't always like this, seriously.
You let him continue without interruption.
I think she feels like she has to get out there and do things with me while she can, and she wants to make the time memorable. This visit has been really different than the others, and it didn't start off good.
Thinking about how Kyra's trip began this summer, you could understand why Cove was thinking along those lines. She probably wanted all the trouble to be worth it in the end. She shouldn't have made me be a part of it. Are you having a good time with your mom around?
Yeah. It's still weird having her and Dad in the same house, but I love her. She's my mom. I like hanging out with her. Most of the time.
It went silent between you both, so you jumped when you heard the sound of a car door closing.
Cove! Molly!
You turned to see Kyra by the driver's side, waving. The sight brought a smile to Cove's face, and she quickly made her way over to where you both were standing.
Thanks for waiting.
I didn't mind.
My baby.
How did I end up with such a polite boy?
She ruffled his hair, and Cove lowered his head, accepting the compliment. You thought about how interesting it was to see how Cove interacted with his mom. And then the memory hit you. That first summer, you and Cove came to this very spot in his runaway attempt to find his way back to his mom. And now you are all here together, It's true. Would I share it in this moment? I don't know. I don't know what I would have done here. I'm like morbidly curious. What he would say, what she would say about it. Okay, I'm gonna make a save. Because I am morbidly curious. I would probably keep the thought to myself. Does Cove bring it up by himself if I don't mention it?
Anyways, it's kind of cool to be here, right on the edge of town.
Exactly. We're standing on a precipice.
Okay. So he doesn't bring it up. I'm just gonna go back. Oops. Hold on. If I whispered it to Cove, what would happen? Taking a step closer to Cove, you leaned in close to share the moment just with him.
Isn't it strange that your mom took us here? This is where you went to try seeing her when you moved to Sunset Bird.
Cove flinched and his eyes darted over to his mom, worried that she heard. When he was satisfied she didn't, he turned back.
Yeah, it's weird, but she doesn't know what happened. At least I'm pretty sure she doesn't.
Really?
Dad likes to tell her things are fine so she doesn't worry.
Okay, interesting. I'm glad I didn't just like blurt it out. I'm gonna go back to my choice, but I was curious what his reaction was gonna be to it. Okay. So we're standing on a precipice. Yeah, I wouldn't have a strong opinion about it. You nodded along, not wanting to press the subject either way. Kyra let out a big breath of air.
We should probably call it a night, huh?
Finally! Would I be like disappointed that the night was actually coming to an end? Nah, I think I would be like, yeah. Let's go. I can't wait to collapse in bed. Kyra shyly smiled and gestured to the car. Quietly, you all made your way back to it. Cove naturally followed you, taking the seat nearby in the back with a collection of fast food bags still strewn about. You rested your head into the seat as the car roared to life. As you did, Cove leaned in close to whisper.
Hey.
Aw.
I can talk to your moms if they do get mad about tonight for some reason. It was my mom's idea. You didn't have a choice.
This was worth it, even if they get mad. Your mouth pulled into the biggest grin, getting a laugh out of Cove.
If you say so.
Cove smiled bashfully at you, but said nothing else. The drive home was smooth and uneventful. The radio was off completely, and you felt your eyelids getting heavy. I should maybe, like, flip a coin for this one, I think. I'm not gonna lie, the entire day I was wondering if I was gonna fall asleep and wake up on Cove. I'm making this happen. You were too tired to keep your head up, and it felt quite comfortable there. Cove didn't have any issues there. He leaned into it. He must have been exhausted too. You were happy to stay close like that. It was warm and comfortable. Adorable. When you opened your eyes, you expected to still be in the car, not your bedroom. It was somehow already morning. You couldn't remember how you ended up there. Sitting up in bed, you thought about how last night was quite an experience. It almost felt like a dream more than a real event, but it definitely happened. And you were glad that you got to have a spontaneous escapade this summer. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Okay. So, now I can flip a coin between these two things and we'll see what happens with that. So I did escapade. I'm curious because I think I heard you get like an item from escapade that can show up in the road trip, but I didn't notice anything. But we'll see if something pops up in road trip where I'm like, ah, that thing. Okay, coin, are we doing road trip tonight or next time? Heads for growing, tails for road trip. Hi, whoa. Okay, let's try that again. Hiya! Tails, we're going on a road trip. Doo, 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 doo. Even though you were awake, the sun had barely peeked its head above the horizon and the sky above was still dark, though lightening by the minute. Usually you wouldn't be up so early, especially during summer vacation, but today was different. Today, instead of the lazy days you were used to, everything around you was a flurry of activity as both your family and Coves prepared for what lay ahead. Because parked in the street, just outside your house, was a massive RV camper, so big you couldn't even see Cove's house behind it. His parents had rented the RV for a few days to take him on a short road trip to see the Redwood National Park. You glanced at Cove, who was standing nearby, taking in the scene in front of him. The prospect of the trip had to be a mixed bag for him, but it was only 3 days, so it seemed he was dealing with it as best he could. Especially now that you and your family were joining them. You weren't sure how exactly it had happened. You knew your parents and Cove spoke to each other often, and somewhere along the way, plans were made after Cliff offered to share the space. The parents all thought it was a fantastic idea. You had already gotten a good look inside while helping to load everything in, and you had to admit that while it was a really big car, fitting that many people inside was going to be snug.
Let's go.
Move it or lose it, kiddo.
Mom bustled past with a cooler in one hand and a large bottle of water under the other. She was upbeat for this early in the morning. Ma is my spirit animal. This is how I would look like. I'm gonna just go back to bed for 8 hours. Ma, however, seemed to be on the other side of the wavelength. She followed behind her wife, dragging her feet on every step.
I'm going to need a whole jug of coffee once we hit the road.
Yup. Way too early. You yawned and rubbed at your eyes, still sleepy from the early morning wake-up call. The air outside was still damp from dew, and that helped make you a bit more alert. And then, at the end of the chain, came your sister. She had a bone to pick before the trip officially started. Her rattling off critiques added some level of normalcy to everything new going on.
Ugh.
I don't get why I can't sleep in the bed tonight. Molly is the youngest, and I'll never fall asleep in that loft.
We're trying to make things fair on everyone. If you want to play the older card, you should be offering to take the loft both nights. It's important for big siblings to make sacrifices for their younger ones.
Elizabeth huffed, not happy with that answer in the slightest, and folded her arms, leaning back against the side of the RV. The trip plans had been nailed down prior, the sleeping arrangements included. Elizabeth still held on to her objections with them. There was a main area of the RV with a couch, loft, and some floor space. At the end of the car was a room with a large bed. Your moms were sharing the bed, Kyra was on the couch, and father and son intended to sleep on the floor. The adults determined you and Elizabeth would switch between the small loft above the driver's seat and sharing the bed with moms. Oh. Interesting. Fine with the arrangements, excited to sleep in a loft. You felt sharing a bed with your parents was going to be awkward, to say the least. I do feel bad that Cove has to sleep on the floor. I'm torn between excited to sleep in a loft and sharing a bed with your parents is going to be awkward. This is probably going to be, great, but I'm not looking forward to tomorrow. You weren't a kid anymore, and yet you were going to have to sleep next to your moms? They assured you they'd try to give you space for the one night you had to share, but you were still not pleased.
All right, you lot. Does everyone have everything they need? We're heading out in 5 minutes. Now's the time to double check. You don't want to forget something important.
At the word, Elizabeth yelped and dashed back into the house, her bedhead hair bouncing behind her as she went. Ma came over and gave you a smile, setting her hands on her hips.
How about you, Molly? Do you have all your clothes packed? Toiletries? Deodorant? Floss? Anything else you can think of?
Whenever I had to pack for trips, I never forgot anything, so I'm confident I have it all. Wanting to make sure everything was organized and ready to go, you had packed the night before and set your alarm too. This is accurate. Yep, I'm good.
That's great. We'll have to wait for the ones who weren't as organized, but we'll be heading off shortly.
With a few minutes left to spare before leaving, you mentally went over what you had packed for the trip. Clothes, a pillow and blanket, usual day-to-day gear for most people. You also had more personal things, such as a gaming console. I wish. I never had one of those. Pencils and paper, my favorite stuffed animal, a couple things to read. Absolutely would have had a couple of things to read. You had packed one of your old favorites and a new one you'd never tried before. You knew you'd have plenty of time for them both on such a long drive. At 13, I would have had a bag of makeup. You kind of dreaded the idea of trying to apply it nicely while in a cramped RV, but it was something you wanted to keep on hand. I always brought my camera with me everywhere I went. It was just a little pocket camera you had gotten from your mom's, but you couldn't miss the opportunity to take some new snaps. And my music. With so much time going to be spent driving in a car, you wanted to make sure you'd be able to have some music to put on. And that'll do it.
Hey, let me take that for you, Molly. I'll stow it in the RV. There's a few spots left it'll fit.
You let Kyra take your bag and gave her a grateful smile. With nothing left to do, you watched the others getting ready for the trip. Kyra and Cliff seemed to have the most energy of anyone. They were finished packing the suitcases away while your moms had gone to lock up the house. They high-fived whenever another one got crammed into the storage compartments of the vehicle. Even though your own parents were more low-key than Cove's, you could tell they were both excited for the trip. It had been a while since your family had been away anywhere together. Elizabeth skipped towards the RV, a bag slung over her shoulder, and you were surprised to see she seemed more optimistic about the whole ordeal now. Usually she wasn't one to exit the confines of her room unless it was for TV or food or to leave her family behind to be with friends. You would have thought 3 whole days packed in an RV with 6 others would be too much for her, but it was a nice surprise. You supposed any vacation was better than no vacation in her mind. Cove had been pretty quiet so far, and, more than anything, seemed to be overwhelmed by the situation. I would have been excited. It was great to get away and explore new places. Soon the miscellaneous remaining tasks had all been wrapped up. Nice. Everyone piled into the RV. It was officially time for the trip to start. And it did. Cliff took the first shift driving. He cautiously navigated the massive car out of the narrow neighborhood streets. It was touch and go for the first part of the journey. Your moms and Kyra were all huddled at the front, trying to get a view of how much space they had on each side. There was a sense of relief when the first long leg of the trip was hit, and the RV would only need to go down one stretch of highway for miles. The mom group cleared out of the driver's area, leaving Cove's dad to it, taking more comfortable seats around the main cabin. You felt like you could finally relax now, too. Time slipped by as morning faded away. Before you realized it, the engine of the RV came to a stop, but only halted for a few moments as Cliff climbed out from the driver's seat and Mom took over. Mom was sitting shotgun, giving Mom a quick tutorial on the controls, as it was her first time driving anything this large. Cliff groaned as he headed towards the rest of you, stretching his arms above his head and loosening up his muscles.
We're making good progress.
Yeah, maybe you should take a nap in the back for a while. That was a long haul you just did, and I know you're on less sleep than usual.
I really like his sunglasses, by the way. Cliff waved a hand, that trademark grin of his slipping into place.
Nah. I don't need sleep. I've still got a few miles in the old tank.
He flexed an arm, showing off his muscles to drive the point about how resilient he was home, and Kyra rolled her eyes in amusement.
Dad, everybody has to sleep.
Cove shook his head at the tough guy act, though Cliff simply chuckled and ruffled his son's hair.
So?
Are you going to be driving again anytime soon, Mr. Holden? I want to know so I can prepare. Did anyone pack some rope? I might need it. There's no seatbelts up here. Rude. Elizabeth called down from where she was lounging in the loft above the driving compartment. She was laying on her back, her hair falling over the side and swinging around as the RV started up again and took off down the road. A bag of potato chips was balanced on Elizabeth's stomach, and she tossed a couple in her mouth right as Cliff held a hand to his chest, pretending to be offended by the remark. Kyra laughed lightheartedly.
Don't worry about that.
Lucky for all of us, we have enough adults to cover the shifts today. He won't be driving again until tomorrow.
Just enough time to write up my last will and testament. I would have shook my head. You didn't have anything to add to the conversation, but it wasn't very funny. Mom then shouted back in her seat to join in the conversation, a playful smile tilting her lips.
What I'm more worried about is this old monster getting us there and back again before falling apart. It looks as though it was built in the early 90s. It must be older than some of the occupants.
You don't mean like the 1990s, do you? That's not that bad, is it? Is it?
That's just the aesthetic of the decor. It's not that old. I think.
Did you ask what year the model was before you rented it?
Kyra wrinkled her nose and thought,
Hey!
Yes, I did. I just can't remember what the answer was.
Cliff chuckled at her while the rest of you let out a collective sigh. The RV lurched a little as it picked up speed, and you held on to the ladder to the loft to keep your balance. You felt something graze the top of your head before a weight settled on your brown hair. When you tilted your chin up carefully to look, you heard the rustling of the bag of chips and realized Elizabeth had rested the end of it on your head. Excuse you? She gestured to the opening, silently offering to share her snack. Oh, okay, I thought you were just using me as a table. Thank you. Reaching up, you scooped up some chips. After that, the weight of the packet left your scalp. You happily munched away as the conversation continued on, and you got closer and closer to your destination. The day flew by, with a group of you chatting, playing games, and passing the time together before finally arriving at the park and setting up for the night. Ma was closing the windows while everyone got ready for bed, saying goodnight to the others as she made her way to the back room. You had all had dinner together while still driving, and some hours after had arrived at your destination and found a spot to park in for the rest of your stay. Giving a look across the front of the RV, you noticed almost everyone there was already dozing off where they were, with Cove having completely fallen asleep, curled up in the passenger seat. He must have done so while Kyra was driving the last leg, and they had decided not to disturb him. Kyra herself was the only one up there who was still awake, flipping through a magazine next to a portable light from her spot on the couch. It seemed Mr. Holden needed to sleep despite his claims. You followed your moms into the back room and closed the door behind you before crawling onto the bed between them. It was a queen-size bed, so there was enough space for the three of you together without too much squishing.
Good night.
Get a good rest, Molly. We've got a big day ahead of us tomorrow.
That's fantastic.
I'm looking forward to the bushwalk in the morning. It's been a long time since I was out in nature like this. There will be plenty for us to see.
You stayed awake for a little while longer while your moms whispered about the park and forests in general. With the sound of their voices in the background, eventually you nodded off to sleep. The next morning, you were up bright and early, preparing for the day ahead. I would probably just have like an okay sleep. It's not my bed, you know. It was nothing compared to your bed at home, but at least you didn't have to sleep on the floor, so you couldn't complain too much. Ma whined a bit about the firmness of the mattress, but Mom had only encouraged her to enjoy the trip while she could. While looking for a spot to get ready, you had some trouble finding a space of your own as the others were doing the same thing. Cove was perched on top of the counter, brushing his hair and tucking up his legs every time someone wanted to move past. The parents were checking, double-checking, and triple-checking that you had everything, to the point where you had stopped listening to them altogether. You knew you wouldn't be returning to the RV at all that day, but by the look of the backpacks that were packed up and ready to go, you doubted anything was missing from them. Ooh. It didn't take much longer until you all exited the RV in a bustle and headed into the Redwood National Park.
Wow.
Nice jacket. Cove had his head tilted up towards the canopy of trees, his eyes wide as he took in the massive trunks on either side of you. You knew that the redwood trees here were considered the tallest trees on Earth, but you weren't prepared for exactly how huge they would be in person.
Come on.
I would love to see those in person one day.
Smile, you two!
You spun just in time for Kyra to snap a picture of you and Cove together before she pointed her camera at Cliff, trying to get a shot despite his weak protest that she should just enjoy the moment. Your parents were walking behind the group a little, with Mom telling Ma some information she had read about the park in a brochure. Ma listened happily while looking around and taking in the sights, every now and then asking a question or making a joke about something Mom had said. You smiled at them, thinking your mom must have read a lot of pamphlets to know so much about the park. Maybe you should come and work here as a tour guide if you know so much about the place, Elizabeth teased, earning a squeeze on the nose from your mom. She seemed to be enjoying herself, but you thought that might just be because she was amused by everyone else's reactions. Yeah, I would have been in awe. Surrounding you on either side, the enormous tree shot up into the sky, the sunlight peeking through their canopy and speckling the path in front of you. The sheer size of the redwoods made you feel like a tiny ant bustling along through the forest. The adults had decided on some casual nature walks rather than any serious hiking, and you strolled along at your own pace, taking in the scenery. Elizabeth sped up a little, smirking at Cove as she fell into place between the two of you, and immediately you could tell by her expression she was gonna say something taunting. I can't believe our families are actually on vacation together. She threw her arms out, speaking with a genuine sense of bewilderment. I would have joked about something like this happening, but now I'm not sure I want to give them any more ideas. Cove smiled at her, even if it was a little awkwardly, and continued walking along. Just watch, next year they'll be talking about their next new amazing idea. She put on a fake voice deeper than her own. We should just sell both our houses and move in together. Think of how much we'd save on the mortgage. It was clear that Elizabeth was being sarcastic. Cove simply shook his head, not really bothered by her. You suppose he was used to it by this point. But seriously, they really do act like we're a single family just because we live across the street from each other. Elizabeth gave you and Cove a look, her eyes glinting with mischief as she leered at you. Oh no you don't.
Yeah.
And there it is. Maybe one day we will be related. Legally, anyway. She said it as though she was a gossipy old lady. But she almost immediately dropped the tone and nonchalantly said her real thoughts. At least that's what Ma thinks. I knew Ma was the shipper. Cove still blushed, which made Elizabeth smile triumphantly as though that was her whole purpose for teasing him. Then he mumbled quietly, refusing to make eye contact with either of you. Ooh, get her!
I don't know why you think you're so funny when no one else does.
I'll marry you, Cove. I mean, I will, but not like this. Not like this. I would have been embarrassed. Why did she always have to say things like that? It wasn't fun, and she knew it. After no further replies, your sister walked ahead. You and Cove swapped uncomfortable looks. The day continued on with plenty to see and experience. You passed a few different activities that you would have liked to try out if you had the time, such as kayaking and rock climbing, but Ma said that would have to wait for another trip. Aww. There was a little stream during the walk that you sat beside and set out a picnic for lunch, nibbling on a selection of fruit, sandwiches, and chips. Various birds flew by overhead, and you made a game out of guessing the species that were hanging out in the trees nearby. You even managed to get a couple of them right, including the kingfisher that grabbed half of Cliff's sandwich. Yeah, I would have been disappointed. There was so much here, and you felt like you'd need a whole week, maybe even more, to experience it all. You sighed quietly to yourself, wondering if you'd get the chance to come back. Your group made it back to camp just as the sun was setting in the sky and the stars were appearing one by one. Everyone had enjoyed different parts of it most. You traded stories of what you thought while you were eating dinner, then afterwards you pitched in to help clean up. You, along with Elizabeth and Cove, got to head back to the RV early and spend some time together while the parents stayed outside longer. It was nice to have the space to yourselves after the cramped journey there, and while Elizabeth had locked herself in the back room with her headphones, you and Cove were left in the main lounge area. Yeah, I would have hung out with Cove. 100%. I guess we should figure out something to do? He took a seat on the sofa while Cove sat down on the other end, tapping his fingers against his knees. Your cheeks warmed a little at that, and the butterflies in your stomach were out in full force tonight. You'd seen Cove nearly every day for the past 5 years, but seeing him in a jacket was still somewhat unusual. In Southern California, he could get away with that. It was a simple difference from his normal style, yet you couldn't help noticing the way he looked. It made you feel incredibly awkward to be thinking such things. Why did you have to be like this? And be like, man, he looks so good in that jacket. When Cove cleared his throat, your eyes snapped to his. He had an eyebrow raised and had clearly caught you staring at him. And now I'm just gonna go bury myself next to one of these trees.
What?
Is everything okay?
Yep, everything's really good. Yeah, everything is really good. You smiled knowingly to yourself about why you felt that way while Cove watched on in confusion. You decided to explain a part of it. You know, I hardly ever see you wearing a jacket, especially in summer.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I like wearing as few layers as possible. It's easier that way. I'd rather be cold than extra hot, and it's kind of a pain to carry extra clothes around. My parents made me bring this jacket.
I'm exactly the same way. I was exactly the same way at 13. I was always really warm. I wanted to wear as little as possible, so I'm the same way. They're bulky and heavy, and they usually make me feel too warm. Cove smiled lightly at you and nodded.
I've noticed.
Oh? You perked up hearing that. He noticed you too. Oh my. Just for future reference. So, what type of stuff do you think looks good on somebody else? Not for yourself. Cove's eyes widened at the question, and his defensive reply seemed to slip out before he'd had the chance to have a proper think about it. Nothing at all?
Nothing!
It was funny. A short laugh escaped you, and you stopped yourself quickly with a hand pressed against your mouth.
Come on.
That's not what I meant.
You composed yourself and sat up straighter, all traces of laughter disappearing from your face. Answer with what you do mean, then. Isn't there anything at all you think looks good when you see it on someone? Cove mumbled under his breath, and you couldn't quite catch the words. He was having a difficult time with the subject. I did kind of put him on the spot. You're not good at these conversations, are you? Rude. I swear I won't make fun of you.
That's not really it.
Cove seemed pretty grumpy about your statement, but you weren't ready to give up so easily. Please? Cove sighed and looked down at his lap where he was fidgeting with his hands, still reluctant to give an answer.
I don't know.
You made an unimpressed sound over how this was going. Are you sure?
Fine. I guess... I kind of like ankle bracelets.
Really? I like them too. Ankle bracelets?
Yeah, everyone can wear a pretty bracelet. Wrist ones are cool too, but they're pretty normal. There's something fun or flirty about ankle bracelets.
Okay, this boy's into ankles. I can respect it.
I mean...
It's more special or something. I don't know how to explain it.
Cove brushed his knuckles against his cheek awkwardly, seemingly unsure where to go from here. So you think they're sexy? Girl, calm down. I like them too. Cove smiled at you, happy to hear he wasn't the only one who felt that way. When he said nothing else, you took a moment to gather your own thoughts. You had to get an anklet on ASAP. Yeah, I'm probably gonna, no reason, but I probably would wear my anklets more often now. You had a couple of different ones at home. With this new knowledge, you might slip them into your daily outfits in the future. You know. Cove looked away again, feeling awkward about this. You gave him an understanding look, and usually he would start to smile like normal again. But not this time. His expression only stiffened more. You were surprised to see him like this, as he always bounced back pretty quickly after being flustered. Cove? Still, he wouldn't look at you, and now even his breathing was growing tense. It began to click. He was trying to build himself up enough to say something hard for him. Oh boy. You waited for it silently. Until finally, he peeked your way through the corner of his eyes. You were fully attentive by this point for whatever he was going to mention next.
That's,
I'm having a heart attack. Ah! So bold! I'm not ready! Ah!
People having brown eyes. That's also something I like.
Huh? For a moment, you were stunned and at a complete loss for words. That was definitely not where you imagined this was going. Ko faced you head on, his expression full of desperate meaning. You got the distinct impression he hadn't chosen that just because he liked the color brown. He chose it entirely because it was your eye color. Was he trying to flirt with you? That was all you could think. Your legs felt like jelly, mom's spaghetti, and you wondered if you might fall right off the couch. Well, this turned into a rather interesting conversation.
What do you like for another person, Molly?
Everything about you! Yep, that's true. What if I said glasses and he started wearing his glasses again? I would die. Muscles, I'm not. That's fine. Muscles is fine. I do like pretty hair, obviously. Glasses, yes. Blue eyes, yes. I don't know which of these three to do. I don't want to be like, I love just you. You're wonderful. Even though my brain's broken. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna do a random number between 1 and 3. 1 will be pretty hair, 2 is glasses, and 3 is blue eyes. Okay. We got the glasses. We got the glasses. Alright, we're going glasses. Cove looked away thoughtfully, and you couldn't quite tell what was going through his mind. You'd look especially good in them. Cove blushed a deeper shade of red and his mouth fell open, acknowledging that you had specified him straight out. Now you were both flirting with each other. Hey! He placed his hands in his lap and looked down. It seemed he hadn't expected to get this far and didn't know where to go from there. With that, the topic abruptly dropped off. Cove officially had no more to say on it. Great. Good. Yep. Good talk. Good talk. The parents all arrived soon after, each of them climbing into the RV and finding some place to sit down and rest their legs. Elizabeth, having heard the commotion, came out from the room for the first time since arriving and joined you all. You spent the evening chatting and playing a few games, enjoying the last evening of the trip together. Bedtime arrived within the blink of an eye. As the group hunkered down for the night, your mom did a final round to be sure nothing had been left behind. She explained that Cliff was going to start driving early in the morning, like on the first day, but would be letting everyone else in the group sleep. There wouldn't be a need for all of them to get up. Now was the time to check you hadn't left anything outside. You, as well as everyone else, were confident you had it all packed up inside the RV, which meant it was time to get some rest before the journey home tomorrow. Your moms and Elizabeth said goodnight, heading to the back room while you climbed up to the loft. Cove and his family got situated below in the previously set arrangement. You tried to get comfortable with a million thoughts were running through your mind. It was hard to believe that the trip was practically over, and before you knew it, you'd be back in your own bed at home. This has been quite the adventure. It was short, that was for sure, but you got to see and do so much during your time here. All in all, it was a nice break away from home. The minutes ticked by silently. It didn't take long for the soft snores of Cliff and Kyra to drift up to you. They were asleep now. But not Cove. You wondered if Cove was still awake and decided to poke your head out from the loft to find out. You blinked through the dark. Looking down the hall, you noticed Cove laying on his back, his eyes staring straight up at the ceiling. His seafoam hair was spread out on his sleeping bag. He must have felt you watching him because suddenly his eyes locked on yours. It was difficult to see much in the dim light, but you could make out the crooked smile on his face well enough. Hey. Cove waved back, still smiling at you through the dim light. You decided to have fun quietly? What does that mean? I probably would have tried to go back to sleep. You lay down, shuffling onto your back and looking up at the rivets set in the roof of the RV through the dark. At some point, your eyes grew heavy and you gently drifted off into a deep sleep. Although, I am curious. Hold on. I just want to know, if I had gestured, would he have come? I am curious. Cove looked unsure about it, but you were happy to see him slowly start to sit up anyway. His sleeping bag rustled as he moved, though he tried to go slow and froze up like a deer in headlights every time he made a sound, watching his parents for any sign of movement. Ooh! Eventually, he managed to maneuver around his sleeping dad and make it to the ladder, standing on the bottom rung where he looked up at you and whispered.
What?
Hi! Good night! After all that, he's just like, good night! I'm feeling a little adventurous today. Do you want to come up? His eyes widened, just so. You could only tell because he had come to where you were. Cove glanced behind him quickly at his sleeping parents before turning back to you.
Okay.
Nice. You broke out into a grin and scooched back as far as you could, making space for Cove to crawl in. He was very tall, so it wasn't a great fit for him, but he managed to squeeze himself in. Luckily, you were short enough to leave him with some room. Hey, I got you. Yay! We got a CG! I'm so glad I went back. I'm like, that ended so abruptly, though. You lay down next to each other on your sides, face to face. He got under the blanket a bit. One of his arms was nestled under his head for comfort. The other had nowhere to go and was rested alongside his chest on the floor of the loft. Cove spoke to you softly.
So, what am I doing here?
I don't know. You can sleep here instead of the floor. Cove raised an eyebrow, not having expected you to bring that up now. That is one of my favorite faces. This is officially my new favorite Cove face.
I'm not sure about this.
Hello, music change. Cove swallowed loudly, and you notice he wouldn't look you in the eyes anymore. Yeah, I'd be feeling it. The two of you had gotten really close over the years, but this was a different kind of closeness. You couldn't fully explain how you were feeling, but you wanted to continue getting closer to Cove. You thought back to earlier in the evening, when you and Cove had been talking alone on the sofa. He had definitely been flirting then, and now you were here. Yeah, I'd only be this bold because, like, the flirting had happened earlier, so... Oh, why am I so anxious? I've got such bad secondhand embarrassment. Yeah, let's ease things with some conversation. So, it's been a really nice night, huh?
Oh, yeah, I guess it has.
Don't you think the loft is more comfortable than it looks?
It's nice.
It's not bad. Would be nice to have more room.
Cove smiled at you through the dim light, and you knew he was only joking. The two of you continued to whisper for a while, becoming more relaxed. You can kiss him now? I'm just gonna... you know what? Before 13-year-old Molly completely implodes, just go to sleep. You didn't do anything, simply letting out a long breath and getting ready to settle in for the night right next to him. This is already a dream. You let your eyes close, and then you could feel Cove rest his head against you in the dark. Ah, so cute. After that, you were soon asleep. Okay, wonderful. I'm so glad I went back for that. Worth it! When you woke up the next morning, it was to the rumble of the RV as it traveled the long journey home. You noticed quickly that you weren't as warm as you had been during the night, and when you checked next to you, Cove was gone. Oh well. Blinking sleepily, you peeked over the edge of the loft to find out where he had gone. Maybe he had snuck back to his spot on the floor during the night? Oh no, however, you soon noticed him sitting on the couch talking quietly with his mom, his head hung in embarrassment. I'm sorry. It was my fault, I take responsibility. Your movement gave you away, and Kyra suddenly looked up and caught your eye. She simply smiled amusedly at you, and it was obvious what happened. Cove hadn't gotten away with it. They found him there in the loft, and then you woke up while he was trying to explain. You knew it was going to be a long, long time before you lived this one down. If you ever did. Well, yep, that's great. This is going to be an awkward drive home. Soon your moms and Elizabeth emerged from their room, dressed and ready for the day of travel. You guys promised us a sleepover, so we were just making good on the promise you made us a while ago. That's what it was, and I'm sticking to that. You spent most of the day hanging out together in the RV, savoring the last few hours of vacation. Kyra suggested a few different travel games she used to play with Cove when he was younger, and you all had a great time competing against each other. A little later in the day, you tried to talk to Cove about what happened in the loft, but he simply apologized and changed the subject. It was a bit too much for him to try speaking on, especially right now. You understood. When the RV finally pulled onto your street, it was well into the night, and you were looking forward to crawling into your own bed after the last few days away. Everyone else must have been feeling the same, because it was mutually agreed that unpacking and cleaning the RV would wait until morning. I'm really glad I didn't try kissing him, because I think he would have felt even worse. Once home again, you went straight up to your room and dropped onto your bed, shoes and all. Happy to be in your own bed, felt weird to be alone, felt good to be alone. You wish you were still on the trip, you miss being near Cove. I think I need a breather too. And it would feel good to... I don't even know what to feel at this point. Probably a little weird. You had gotten so used to having all the others around you all the time, as well as the rumble of the RV, that it felt oddly quiet being by yourself. with those last few thoughts drifting through your mind, it wasn't long before you dozed off to sleep. Tomorrow, life would go on like normal. Good, I think I could do with a little bit of normalcy, honestly. Woo, that was spicy meatball. But things are progressing, methinks. Yep. Alright, only one more moment left to go. We'll finish this off next time.